Visits of politicians to Beijing. You know, this is a very multifaceted topic. Let's stay on this for a bit longer. We are joined by Alexander Chupak, an expert at the Analytical Center for Ukrainian Strategic Studies. Mr. Alexander, greetings to you.
Greetings to you.
Let's discuss this with you now. After Trump, Putin is going to Beijing. The timing, why after Putin? They're preparing to participate. Why is Beijing gathering its friends after Trump's visit? What is your perspective?
Trump's visit has so far been marked from the Chinese side. In my opinion, as stated in the Chinese press release, after Trump visited, the focus shifted more to economic issues. Interestingly, in the Chinese press releases and media, they didn't mention this at all. The topic of Iran was discussed, but obviously this was a priority for Trump. However, for China, the main focus was the economy. And it is precisely the economic aspect that is linked to Putin's visit, specifically regarding the export of energy resources from Russia to China. Because as a result of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, China is currently receiving about 10 to 20% less of its oil imports, and as is well known, Russia is the largest supplier of oil to China. China currently imports and receives approximately 20% of its total crude oil supply from Russia. And Russia, in turn, now sells more than half of all its global oil exports directly to China. And of course, there is the issue of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline, which the Russians have announced. Here, it is probably not worth expecting any quick results because this is a very long-term project that could take many years. However, even here, the Russians will likely face the significant problem that China will demand the most heavily discounted and lowest possible price from them. Specifically, as according to a detailed report recently published by the Financial Times, China wants Russia to sell its gas at the exact same price it sells to its own domestic population. That is to say, a price much lower than the current prevailing prices found on the global energy market. This fundamental disagreement over pricing is primarily the core reason for Putin's recent high-profile visit to Xi Jinping. Of course, many geopolitical issues will also be discussed there. The topic of the Russian-Ukrainian war will definitely come up, but most likely for China, it will be a secondary matter.
Mr. Alexander, as you are well aware, if I may ask you a somewhat more personal question, there is a specific issue that I just can't seem to wrap my head around. When the entire global security configuration is completely disintegrating and collapsing right before our very eyes. World leaders gather to talk exclusively about economic issues. Don't you see a certain dissonance here?
Up until this point, we have not yet observed any significant global threats to such major players as China. We're talking now about the visits of leaders to China. And right now, China is taking on the role of an observer. It's as if we're sitting on the riverbank like that sage, waiting for the bodies of our enemies to float by. And again, I already mentioned that after the summit with Trump, neither the Chinese media nor the Chinese government commented in any way on the talks about Iran. That is, they supposedly want to distance themselves from all these military actions, as if we are some kind of third party that is not involved in this madness, as if we supposedly want everyone to make peace. We are offering, just as they are offering Russia and Ukraine, a peace plan that is obviously good for Russia and bad for us. And maybe they'll do something like that for China as well. But, well, we see that when they used to gather, Europeans recently talked about security issues. But China, it has a rather specific position. It wants to present itself as a dove of peace and claims to want to help everyone, but at the same time, it wants to take maximum advantage of the weaknesses of those who are engaged in a protracted war.
Mr. Alexander, and everything would be fine if, on the eve of Putin's visit to China, this dove of peace's cargo ship hadn't gotten involved. A Russian Shahed drone, in Ukrainian waters, of course. Tell me, please, in your opinion, will this incident come up during the conversation between Putin and Xi Jinping?
Personally, I truly believe that this was most likely the case, and it seems quite probable. An accidental incident. It's unlikely that Russia wanted to send a message to China by striking their vessel. Basically, when Russia sees something moving in the western part of the Black Sea, closer to the shores of Ukraine, it tries to strike those targets. Because really, whether it's military or civilian vessels or any other targets, Will this escalate? Maybe. Maybe Putin will be told, you're already our vassal. You have to follow our orders and instructions. So why are you interfering here with our specific maritime targets in the region? And maybe because of this situation, Putin will receive some new demands from China, perhaps regarding the price of oil, which is already being sold to China at an exceptionally large and significant discount. Most likely it was just an accident that, unfortunately, has become a tragic and frequent routine occurrence, since Russia demonstrates a complete lack of concern regarding exactly where it strikes in the Black Sea.
Well then, let's take a moment to discuss the situation regarding the Russian Federation as well, especially since there are already increasingly vocal and public warnings coming from within Russia itself, suggesting that the current Russian economy simply won't be able to withstand the pressure of a significantly prolonged and taxing conflict. Continuation of the special military operation. I'm quoting here, God forgive me, a communist deputy of the State Duma of the Russian Federation. Mr. Alexander, what do you think about this mouthpiece from the Russian communists who is now openly saying from the podium that this needs to be brought to an end? What is he talking about? Can we say how much Russia might be in a pre-election state? Does this play any role in the internal political processes within the Russian Federation?
It plays a significant role. In fact, we have been hearing for quite some time from Russian officials about serious economic problems. In particular, even last year, I remember in June 2025, both Elvira Nabiullina, the head of the Russian Central Bank, and Finance Minister Anton Silvanov, both of them said that the Russian economy is suffering and will soon enter a state of recession. Furthermore, as we can clearly observe from the available data, already at the very beginning of the year 2026, according to the official economic statistics released by the Russian government, which of course we must remember we cannot fully trust or take at face value, a notable decline in Russia's overall gross domestic product by 0.2% was officially recorded and reported to the public. If there is another quarter in a row with a decline, that will officially be a recession, because the recession is always defined by a decline in GDP for 2 consecutive quarters in a row. And when in an economy that is heavily skewed toward the military industrial complex, such a decline occurs, it happens mainly or almost entirely, we can say, at the expense of the civilian sector of the economy, because in the military sector, resources are being pumped in. Everything that Russia receives from energy exports, from additional revenues, we know that Russia has increased it. The value-added tax was raised from January 1st of this year from 20% to 22%. All of this is being used to somehow maintain the pace of this exhausting full-scale war against Ukraine. Those sectors that are civilian, intended to somehow support the standard of living of ordinary Muscovites, are the ones that bear the full burden of these cuts. And as for what this communist representative is currently articulating, we can safely assume that his own voters, the very people whom he represents, are already starting to reproach him. Our internet access is being constantly cut off. We are facing massive levels of inflation. The prices of everyday goods are skyrocketing, and there is absolutely no opportunities for employment anywhere else except for SOO, military enterprises. That's why he's talking about it. And as for Russian law and the economy, the problems are enormous. And, well, of course, this is a matter of political will. Is Putin still willing to sacrifice civilians in order to keep fighting? Because if he really is prepared to commit to this path, then the ongoing military conflict could potentially go on for many years, but it will be experienced with extreme and painful intensity by ordinary Russians.
Well, next is our story and response, Ukraine's answer to the Russian lightning strike. Ukraine has developed a tactical kamikaze drone that can penetrate almost 50 kilometers deep into Russia.
Our Olga Dunska not only witnessed its testing, but also tried her hand as an operator. What can our latest development do, and why, in fact, is it called the Bebradron? Watch this.
At the testing ground, engineers are preparing to test the Bebradron, a fixed-wing UAV. They set up communications, assemble all the components, and check the balance.
The camera is strategically positioned so that the remote pilot on the ground can clearly see and safely navigate the complex surrounding terrain. Right behind the camera is installed. This is a dummy munition. It weighs 7 kilograms.
Deployment time is up to 10 minutes. Next comes the launch from the catapult. In the sky, the Bebradron reaches speeds of up to 150 kilometers per hour.
The maximum tested payload on our side is 10 kilograms, but the optimal is about 7 kilograms to ensure a range of over 40 kilometers.
Engineer Andriy shows how to control the drone, and even lets us try it ourselves.
Just pull the stick towards yourself a bit.
If you have piloting skills, they say it's much easier to master.
I fly at an altitude from 50 to 300 meters, but we can easily go up to a kilometer and even higher. Those who have flown FPV, like our combat pilots in our field team, they learned in about 10 to 15 minutes. And
the drone is also equipped with cruise control and visually resembles the Russian Molniya.
This is a system designed to fly through electronic warfare zones and in general for the pilot's comfort during the mission, so that they can perform some task that might come up nearby. It's more of an analog to the Molniya in terms of use, because technically the only thing it shares with the Molniya is its visual appearance.
This is already the second modification of the Bebradron, and it's more advanced. It took 3 months to develop. The engineers say there's very little time, they needed it yesterday. And here's how they explain the name.
Bebradron is a Ukrainian meme that was popular at one time when teenagers would just say things like, "Sniff the beaver," and we decided to use it for our Bebradron so that the enemy could feel it for themselves.
Moreover, the Bebradron is already working successfully in the Kharkiv direction. The commander of the FPV drone unit of the 115th Brigade picked up a batch back in March.
Let's put it this way. It's heavier, but you can get used to it and we'll keep working. Right now, as an FPV crew, we've managed to get a kill zone at about 20 kilometers. That's quite a good result, but we'd like to achieve more. Beyond 20 kilometers, using a regular FPV drone is no longer very practical, simply because an ordinary battery won't be enough. A fixed-wing drone, thanks to its size and its wings, can carry a larger warhead over a greater distance.
For the sea itself, fixed-wing drones are already familiar.
We encountered not a Ukrainian one, but specifically a Russian one, because it was operating over a Navi. But let's say it was very much like it was just an encounter because it simply flew in and didn't explode. You can equip it with a slightly better camera and it will become a reconnaissance drone. You can equip it with drop mechanisms and it will be able to drop munitions, carry out mining and so on. Thanks to its flight range, our operational capabilities will increase many times over. It will be used for both regular strikes as well. If our strike is successful, we will be able to move on to more extensive reconnaissance. After reconnaissance, we will proceed to mining operations.
Not only the UAV operator is monitoring the Bebradron's flight, but also Cholka, the drone detector.
It intercepts the drone's analog signal the drone operator's controls and displays the entire picture that the enemy drone operator sees. Recently, we were sent a video. Unfortunately, the military did not forbid its publication. Well, a fraction of a second can save a life. They managed to see you hear their own vehicle and had time to jump out of it. The vehicle, unfortunately, is beyond repair or anything else. It's already destroyed, but 6 soldiers saved their lives. It gives a chance to survive.
Chuika is now officially being supplied to the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Bebradron is currently undergoing codification, after which state contracts will be signed. For now, engineers are handing it over to the military for testing and feedback. From Odessa region, Olha Dunska, Ihor Kazanji. We are Ukraine. Marathon. United News. Ukraine continues its powerful sanctions in the enemy's rear. The Russian Lukoil oil refinery in Kstovo has been hit. This is in the Nizhny Novgorod region. It is on fire. The scale of the damage, our general staff is still clarifying. Also last night, Ukrainians struck an oil pumping station in Semibratovo, Yaroslavl region. The Muscovites blocked the main highway to Moscow in the region. Hundreds of drones were detected over the Smolensk, Voronezh, Kaluga, Leningrad regions of Russia, as well as Tula, Belgorod, and the Moscow suburbs. And there will be even more of them, promises the Ukrainian president.
I have approved our long-range plans for June, and we need to creatively expand the Ukrainian long-range sanctions that demonstrated their strength in May. I am grateful to all our warriors for their accuracy.